my prediction, Markus, I think that either will Leverkusen hammer them, and I mean hammer them. I think they will get they will just come out big time and surprise Bayern, winning by 3 goals.
Hi and welcome to the German Fußball podcast. I'm your host, Markus Fjortoft, and as always joined by co-host Jan Fjortoft. Dad, an incredible Bundesliga weekend, a lot to digest, a lot to analyze and go through before we kind of get into it, get into the intensity and all the analysis, because there are plenty of talking points. Talk to me about your weekend. What was your vibe this weekend?
Well, I think we should start with your weekend, really, or last night, because I guess last time we made a podcast, you were sitting there in your Kansas Chief shirt, and I know you and your fiancée,
You see those
Anna,
there, yeah.
yeah, they are. You've been out to celebrate Kansas. I guess it was a late night.
Yeah, it was, because the nature of the game, you know. So we went to an event. It was pretty cool, and we watched the game. And admittedly, I enjoy watching it. I also have a little note to say, because I was checking the Twitter. Generally, people who have to go on Twitter to say how boring or bad it is, I think, how about you just don't? And then rather just enjoy the football, because actually, once you do enjoy it, it's fantastic. And what I will say, Patrick Mahomes will become one of the greatest quarterbacks. But what we all can agree on, whether you like the sport or not, is when the greatest athletes turn up when the pressure is the highest. And that is what's cool. And then we can say that within football, within any other sport, when they turn it up, you don't even have to like the sport. You just have to admire the quality and the way you're able to turn up at those right moments. And that, I think we all should have a little time for. So that's my little spiel. That's my little my conclusion from this weekend's events.
And when it goes get tough, the tough get ready. I mean, that's what it's all about. And my weekend was also becoming one of the tough guys. On Saturday, I saw Manchester City, Everton, worked on that game, and City were useless. I mean, first half, I mean, they didn't create one chance. I have my note. I didn't have anything on my note before 1-0. And of course, that was Erling Haaland. Erling been injured for a while, and with his right foot, a brilliant volley. And it's also about positioning yourself. I mean, I love my corner position. He went a bit out, but he did it brilliantly. And then the 2-0, of course, Kevin De Bruyne. I think that was Erling Haaland, all what Erling Haaland is about. First of all, his run to avoid offside. The boy got never in offside. Then a kind of touch. He had 5 touches, Markus. One of them, between, he had to use his body to take Brandwaite away. And he's not like a small guy either. So he just disappeared. But a key for people who saw that goal is the 4th touch, because the 4th touch, he put the ball left for him to get him his good foot, and then he goes down on his standing foot and just around Pickford. So, and after the game, I had Sean Dyche, Jordan Pickford, Pep Guardiola, and Erling Haaland. So that was a good day of work. And then I went down to Birmingham to Villa Park. It was Aston Villa against Manchester United, and although Manchester United never impressed, it was unbelievable that Aston Villa didn't score more goals. They were pressing all the time. Then they got the equalizer with Lewis. But then out of nowhere, McTominay, I mean, his timed run in the box, I guess he's the top scorer of Manchester United this season. His time running is fantastic. And yes, it's a good skill to win tight football games. And Manchester United in a good run now. We had a lot in the pre-match about these Garnacho, Manu, and Højlund. I think that is a good legacy for Ten Hag. He's also good in his application now with a new project. Yeah, so that was my English weekend. But I kept, of course, an eye. I went home from Etihad, made myself ready, a couple of Red Bulls on the bed, waiting for the big game. And wow, Leverkusen didn't surprise at all. They just went out and did what Leverkusen have done more or less since Xabi Alonso came to the club 1.5 years ago, or maybe not so long either.
And we will get into, there's 2 ways of going by this, right? We can go by how bad Bayern were or how good Leverkusen were. And we'll get into in terms of the situation with Tuchel, but also it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on the Thomas Müller rant, which was also kind of rather noteworthy. in terms of what he had to say. But if you had to kind of break it down in terms of key topics from this game, how would you, what are some of the main thoughts you're left with after this result?
Well, interesting. All my colleagues in Germany, they wanted to do every mistake on Tuchel. I mean, that's making it exciting. Of course, when Bayern Munich at the moment, yes, before this game, their point tally is not bad, but they haven't played well, except for a couple of games they have played okay. But Tuchel doesn't seem to find his first team, so to say, his best team. He came out with 3 at the back, surprisingly, but he has played with 3 before. If he won the game, it would be a genius. But he went out there, and it was not like, did Leverkusen play a world-class game? No, we've seen them better. But still, there was something about a self-confidence, a thing that they just do it because we're doing it, and we don't care who we play. And Bayern Munich didn't seem to get passes together. So it was so many bad performances of Bayern players. Of course, they add up to a bad Bayern performance. Tuchel, before the game, before I come to Leverkusen, he did some big decision. Not surprisingly, put Upamecano back. De Ligt said he was top fit. That was a kind of a soap opera afterwards. He said it was top fit. Joshua Kimmich was not in the starting 11. Thomas Müller was not in the starting 11. And I would like to say, a bit tabloid, Harry Kane and Musiala weren't in there either. Because we never saw them. Harry Kane, a guy who is always involved. I think he had 8 touches in the first half. That is so untypical him, because he's a kind of guy that can influence the game. Musiala never get going. And I mean, we talked about the duel between Florian Wirtz and Musiala. Well, Florian Wirtz was just unbelievable. Everything he's doing has head and tail. There is always something he tries to do. If he doesn't succeed, you can see, wow, did he see that? Oh, he did try to do that. So, I mean, great game. And the 1-0, Markus, I think was typical for the whole game. First of all, they were not concentrated, Bayern being at a throw-in. And then suddenly a ball across. You as a defender have seen many of those balls. Nobody seemed to care about that ball. And then Bowie, who played some kind of a left in a 3-5-ish kind of system, he slept, and it was easy task to do the 1-0.
And it's interesting because it is these narratives, and that's why I wanted to hear what some of the main topics that you derive from it, because it would be very easy to say, oh, look at Bayern, why are Bayern so bad? While we can also credit Alonso and Leverkusen in terms of what they did. And you made a good point in terms of not that they necessarily excelled offensively, but it was a very mature and responsible performance. Very solid defensively, without being too hung up in XGs and whatnot. I think it's one of the lowest Bayern had in 3 years, since they played against Mainz in 2021. What we touched upon going into this preview is that as well, is that Alonso, for all his kind of, we talk about his offensive play, his influences, Guardiola, whatever, but there is that kind of defensive solidity, that pragmatism to it that made them play very well, but maybe not under the traditional metrics of what we'd say as well, that they played spellbinding football. They were very good. They were very organized and won deservedly. What I would like to hear with you about also is like how we spin these narratives as well, because while Tuchel made his adjustments, so did Alonso. It was interesting that Frimpong, one of the standout performers, I'd say, in the top 5 leagues this season, he brings in Stanisic on loan from Bayern. He drops Schick and Iglesias, and he plays with Amin Adli up top. He's got Telain, Hoffmann's on the bench. So it's not to say that Alonso didn't make his adjustments playing Bayern either, did he?
I think that's one of the thing that we knew would happen this football weekend is, one, that Stanisic, who never scores a goal, will score against Bayern. Declan Rice would score against West Ham. And Taylor Swift will kiss her boyfriend on American TV live for 1 billion crowd. I mean, that was the things that are happening. And although we think that Alonso is all about going forward, I spoke with Henry Winter. He had a theory saying that the best coaches in the world are the midfield players, the kind of holding midfielders. And it's an interesting theory. And mind you, Alonso played for Real Madrid. Real Madrid. He has played for Real Madrid. He has played for Bayern Munich. He's played for Liverpool. And even when we think back now, you will think of the great players they had going forward in the period that he was there. But all three teams on a solid defense. And for him, that being Andrich and Xhaka in midfield, which will be, they are just enormous. And there was a scary moment at the beginning of the game when Xhaka went down, and it looks like he had to go off. And I think that would be very bad news for Leverkusen and good news for Bayern. But there is some solidity about this Leverkusen team. And the way, as you were saying, he's changing around. And it looks like everything he does, okay, of course he does. Players going to Africa. You remember Africa Cup. You remember.
Well, that's a good point as well, because they brought in players that we didn't really pay much attention to per se. They were more squad players who now come in and fill their role. And like you say, Tella, Nkapi, Stanisic.
Exactly. And of course, the main thing is to win football games. I mean, if you don't win football games, that is an experiment going wrong. Ask Thomas Tuchel about the three at the back and so on. But at the moment, it seems that whatever Alonso is doing, he's doing the right thing. The interesting thing now, Markus, is the consequences of this loss for Bayern, and the interesting thing about the win for Leverkusen, because it's 13 games to go. That's 39 points. There will be some deciders. Still, Bayern got the culture. Still, Bayern knows that they can win it. Still, Bayern could win it, but it's all about how will the next days go. And I follow German press very closely. It's all about Tuchel and how long will they trust him. The CEO goes out and we see we support him. We won't do anything. And the headline was, he won't be fired yet.
Do you think under difference, if it weren't for the fact that Nagelsmann had been sacked last season, which you could argue were under similar circumstances, very similar considering that he was fired after that Leverkusen loss last season, if it weren't for the fact that Nagelsmann and they'd fired him, that Tuchel might have gone now?
I think it's a good point, because I think that Bayern have said all along, we need consistency. That's what I said to Nagelsmann. They gave him a long-term contract. He is the sort of the new wine. He's the one that get the young players in. And then we just had to fire him because Tuchel was available. And although that would be not the first time the Bayern leaders or football leaders have spoken against their own principles that were old after 2 weeks, I can't see that happening now. I think they also, the Champions League coming up, they need to be calm going into that. But mind you, there is a trap now for them, because they got a good draw. We have to say, all due respect to Lazio. Lazio won again now at Cagliari. They won 3-1 away from home, but they haven't been good at Serie A. So that is a kind of trap for them, because, I mean, I think Markus, if you don't win a title, meaning what's more realistically is the Bundesliga, he'll be fired in the summer. Should he be knocked out by Lazio, I think they will fire him short term. Then they will take him out. So that's my prediction of the future of Thomas Tuchel.
And on that topic, and someone who actually refused, albeit the reporter's intentions of trapping him into saying something about the coach, was Thomas Müller. After the game, he's tended to be the talisman after games, the one that has stepped up and had to speak up after disappointments for Bayern. And there's been a lack of leaders otherwise, but it tends to be Thomas Müller who always takes the mantle when it comes to that. Now, he had a rant, Dad, and why don't you kind of give context as to what he said? Because he was refusing to basically talk about Tuchel or anything, but it was more so what the 11 players out there made in terms of decision, which I found interesting, which he said very, very passionately as well.
Well, Thomas Müller has been around so many times. He knows, he's good at timing. He knows what to say. It's also, in a positive way, predictable what he said, and that he was saying it at the time he was saying it. My former colleague at Sky, Patrick, tried to get it into the coach, being three at the back, being the coach, decision, you don't play free. Basically, he said that he can't believe. First of all, it was very gracious and generous to Leverkusen, but then he had a rant at his team, and he's saying that I can't believe that we have so many top players here. We're doing in training week in and week out, coming to to the games, and to quote Oliver Kahn, his former teammate, said, "We have no balls," kind of aya. And he was going on about that. And I think that Thomas Müller, he is good at kind of reading the room, reading the fans' room, and he did that again. I think that Bayern got to start there. I think that you have to start by attitude, because there is no way that man for man, this team should be 5 points behind Leverkusen. Having said that, Markus, I think we talked about that before. I think some of the players in the Bayern team are overestimated. I don't think they are as good as we say. And saying again, it's no critic of Eric Dyer, but Eric Dyer had no chance of getting a game for Tottenham Hotspurs. And now we suddenly have to play all the games for them. I mean, there's reason for that. Kim was back now. Upamecano was in there, but still he chose to play Dyer in there. And so yes, Thomas Müller said the right words, and now we just have to see the consequences of that. I mean, I've been following Bayern more or less all my life. Since I came to Austria when I played for Rapid Vienna, I was having Sportbild, buying Bild Zeitung, and it's the same procedure as every time Bayern is in trouble. There is like a thing going, and it's the same people. Uli Hoeneß is still around, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge is still around, more or less Thomas Müller is still around. So this is the player's view. Then the media will say what's going on, and then coming into the game, they will hope that things calm down a bit, and then they win the game. The problem this season, Markus, is that they're not very convincing. I mean, they're winning football game, but it's not very convincing, and I think that's what's worrying also Thomas Tuchel. I think Thomas Tuchel is very worried that he looks like he's leading and setting out his strategy, and he doesn't get any feedback from his players.
Yeah, and that is the worry, isn't it? It's a different type of feel when the performances don't align necessarily as well. Just to conclude on this stat as well, Rolfes came out in terms of commenting on Xabi Alonso's contract situation, etc. He said, "I think he'll stay. He's got a good thing going here. He's happy. His contract, blah blah blah." Would it be surprising if Xabi Alonso stayed another season or two?
Well, first of all, if Liverpool are desperate and they say we put all the money on getting Xabi Alonso, I got a feeling they will get him. Having said that, if there is one man, if there is one coach who will have a good look at his development as coach, will have a good look to analyze the Liverpool job, because it doesn't matter who will come after Jurgen Klopp. That will be a hell of a place to go. Yeah. Xabi Alonso will do that. It's a fair point that he's the front runner. He ticks more or less all the boxes except experience, because he has been long around as a player, but make no mistake out of it. It's something else to coach Liverpool Football Club than Bayer Leverkusen, and I say that with the greatest respect for Leverkusen. On the other hand, Leverkusen is a club that also knows they're developing players. They have players on loan. They have never won anything, meaning that they just hope to develop players longer and longer and keep a team together. So it wouldn't be the first time that they have lost their best players. They have, meaning Florian Wirtz, Boniface, Frimpong, and so on. So they would let him go if Xabi Alonso said, "I want to go to Liverpool." But there are a couple of ifs here. And what I was told in England now, the Liverpool fans are so close following Leverkusen. There are apparently Liverpool fans going over, following his development. And I think as we get closer to the season, that will be even more talked about, because I think also that Liverpool Football Club is a club that we talked about that before. They managed to get their mouth shut, and they will know that it's good for Liverpool to not have many speculation about a new manager coming to Liverpool. And it's also in respect to Leverkusen. This is a good club, decent people around, more than decent, in Xabi Alonso and Simon Rolfes, just to name two of them, that they will respect that they are in a battle of winning the Bundesliga. So I expect, Markus, that maybe this will drag on. And there is a big chance that we will know who the new manager of Liverpool is first, just after the season is finished.
Interesting. It will be interesting to follow. That we could talk about this forever, couldn't we, in terms of the game? But we have other rather interesting topics to discuss. One of which I think deserves a longer episode by itself, but it's worth mentioning, and that is the protests that were wide sweeping across the Bundesliga, the first and second Bundesliga match day. You had games delayed. There were tennis balls thrown on. There were all kinds of ways to delay the games. And this is obviously in response to the proposed investment deal into German football. As we know, because of how the 50+1 rule, you can't have majority investors into these German clubs. However, the more valid kind of investment proposal is, okay, we'll go into German football, the DFL, and we'll invest in there. And with it, obviously, involves certain interests. There are investors there who will look to make money and whatnot, which runs so counter to the German football spirit, Dad. And despite assurances from the higher up and saying, listen, it won't compromise anything, the German fans are not having it. Could you, like I said, it deserves a longer episode because it is complex in that sense, but could you give us just a quick kind of synopsis as to why it's so fervent and why it's so principled in Germany in terms of against this deal, despite assurances that nothing will be compromised, but rather elevate the quality and the standards of German football, supposedly?
Well, I guess your summarize was good. The Bundesliga is like a Premier League, is a own company, so to say, Deutsche Fußball League. And as you're saying, they will get some big sponsors in, or investors, as they call them. I mean, words can be different here with sponsors and investors. That's two different things. What people should know, there's a big difference between German fans and English fans, not in terms of passion, but in terms of how they get involved in politics. I mean, when the Arabs came into Newcastle, the whole Newcastle looked like Riyadh in 10 minutes. That would never happen in Germany. They are very proud of their independence. They are very proud of the 50+1 rule. They're very proud of the power of the members. And then you have to find a balance. You've seen in some clubs, also in my club or our club, Eintracht Frankfurt, that maybe the ultras has gone too far sometimes with them and other clubs too. So you have to find a balance somewhere so you don't get environment too far into a club, because then again, there are CEOs, there are people who are elected to run the club, and as there are from the Bundesliga. And I think this is about the ownership. The fans are they are afraid that this German fan culture will get lost because they have so member steered, so to say, German Fußball. And it's also that the German fans, they got a tradition of telling that. They are using posters. You've seen so many posters. I guess it was in Hamburg now, they put so chains in there with lockers that delayed the game 15, 60 minutes or more so. So it's more of a culture that the members are heard. The members know they have a platform and they're using that to protest. I would not sit here to say what's right and wrong. I only say that I can understand the German football leaders that they see when they see around, or they look around Europe, and especially in England, which are the competitors that are getting so much money involved in the game. How can we get away that we can use the money to strengthen our league? And they, like you were saying, they try to tell the fans, but all the soul of German football is safe. That's okay. The 50+1 rule will stay. I think, but I also understand the fans, because the passionate fans in Germany, and they love this involvement in the club. I can only try to predict. I am afraid if they would manage to stop this, there could be a time the 50+1 rule will be talked about, because a Bayern team who will compete with the best in the world, it's quite hard, and I say this with an understatement, for a member club to compete with state clubs. Having said that, Markus, because I know that people comment on that, just remember the 50+1 rule, meaning that the club could have 49% investors, meaning that Bayern could have Adidas or Allianz and so on as powerhouses in there. And then to complicate it even more, You have Hoffenheim with a private investor. You have Bayer Leverkusen with a Bayern concern. You have Wolfsburg with Volkswagen, and so on. So it's not easy, Marcus. And I think that this needs to be settled. And I hope that the parties will find kind of settlement, that they have enough money to develop German football, but still manage to keep that passionate German football culture.
We could discuss this at length in terms of what that entails, because there are pros and cons on both sides, and not necessarily endorsing one right over the other. Let's just quickly go through the rest of the Bundesliga round. We obviously had Dortmund back in winning ways. We had Füllkrug, who turned 31, and he marked that with a goal and 2 assists, and he looks increasingly likely to be Germany's front man. We had obviously another Germany frontman in Undab, who scored his 14th of the season as Stuttgart beat Mainz. Mainz have now sacked their manager. He took over for Bo Svensson, who did very well and then not so well this season. Took over in November. He has been able to secure a win in the last 11 matches. They have 6 draws and 5 defeats, and yeah, Mainz just can't get out of that bottom 2 along with Darmstadt. I mean, it's a sad bit of affairs, because you would have thought that Mainz at the very least would be kind of in the middle of the pack there, but really struggling to get going this season.
Yes, and we are recording this Monday late afternoon, and Mainz have said that Tuesday afternoon they will have a new coach in there. Steffen Baumgartner from Köln, of course, he will be wanted there, and I think we can put in the same kind of rack. Hamburger Sportverein, they sacked their man as well, and the reason I say that is that the Steffen Baumgartner will of course be a candidate, being there as well, and I saw
because he's a fan as well, right? He's a Hamburg fan.
Yeah, if you say so. Yeah, of course.
According to the sources.
Yeah, of course the sources. Yeah, yes, I didn't know that. Yeah, and that will help as well. But Jonas Bolt, who is the head of sports of Hamburg, says Polzin, who came there as assistant coach, he will be in charge 100% at their game in Rostock, and then we'll see who to do. I put in Felix Magath, my old coach. Why don't you just get a guy in for the last game, try to secure a place there, former legend of the club, scored the winner in the European Cup, of course, against Juventus in the 80s, and sometimes you need someone different to come in. And that's, Marcus, also for Mainz, because Sievert, whatever you say, he was kind of not an experiment, but he didn't have the experience. And I think now, I mean, you're talking to a guy who knows one or two things about an Abstiegskampf, a relegation battle in Germany. I think this is the time. You have 13 games to go, 39 games. I think you need an old fox in there now. I think you shouldn't go with just some safe. I think you should get someone in to just get enough points, because you have a look at the table now, looking dangerous for Mainz now. So you need to have wins straight away. So I think they will go for an old fox. When people listening to this, they know if I was right or wrong, because I think in the next 24 hours we will know.
That will be, we'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the case. We have Darmstadt there at the bottom 2 with Mainz. They played a very unremarkable draw with Gladbach. You had Eintracht, who drew against Bochum, going a bit slower for our dear Eintracht. And then you had Köln at the very bottom there, who led until the 94th minute. And then you had good old Kramaric there with the equalizer. You had the Köln youngster, Max Fingraf, who had a very nice free kick, who gave them the lead, but 1-1 there. And then we must give a shout out to Heidenheim, who now are undefeated in 8 Bundesliga games. Go to Bremen, beat Bremen. You have the former Bremen player, Jan-Niklas Beste, who I think would at least, I think he deserves a nod for the international games in March, because he has been that good at the very top of the assist charts in the Bundesliga. He had a goal and an assist, and they beat a Bremen side that were flying. And they won 2-1. I mean, I cannot cease to be impressed by what Frank Schmidt and Heidenheim are doing. It's incredible.
It's incredible, Marcus, and the way they're doing it, you have a look at the table now. Just a couple of more wins now, and they will be safe. They will be in there, Heidenheim, and that that is surprisingly. But again, you said it. Frank Schmidt's been around for many years. He knows the stuff. He's doing the right thing. They know what they're going at, and if I put my mind to right, is there only one game left now? Is it Augsburg RB Leipzig 2-2? Is that the last game? No?
That one, and then we have Wolfsburg or Union Berlin Wolfsburg. But yes, RB Leipzig, Augsburg or Augsburg RB Leipzig 2-2. Augsburg are a little tough cookie to crack, really. And they have Demirovic, who I really like. Just a good 25-year-old, interesting profile, Bosnian. He plays with this kind of aggression, but great quality. You have obviously Openda there, who scored as well. Yeah,
he missed a penalty as well, didn't he?
And missed a penalty. And missed a penalty as well at 2-2. And then, yeah, we have Wolfsburg, who lost to Union Berlin. And Union Berlin, who we spoke about, were in really relegation danger. Following their win against Wolfsburg, they're 1 point behind Wolfsburg. And Wolfsburg and Kovac has to be careful, I think. It's 2 wins in the last 15 games for Niko Kovac. Been very underwhelming this entire season. Young team, not distinct profiles, but even still, you would have hoped for something better from Wolfsburg. So I'm a bit worried for fellow Eintrachter Niko Kovac.
Yes, he could be the guy who will be the next one to be fired. We're into the fire season now, because when you have it's 13 games, that there's still a chance you can get a new coach in. And Wolfsburg now, when they kind of seeing the relegation zone getting closer and closer, that is a danger for them. So it's interesting, because this is the season that they love to fire a coach at this time in Germany. And I also say, Markus, that we are talking about Leipzig, we're talking about Dortmund, of course. Leverkusen and Bayern will be up there, of course. The battle for the 5th position is interesting, because it seems that with the new format of the Champions League, the 5th position in either Germany or England will get the 5th spot. So it could be enough for the 5th position. And I did Manchester United, Aston Villa, of course, a major game in terms of the 5th position. Or the 4th, but Tottenham is in there. They won against Brighton in the last minute. And I spoke to our friend Rafa Honigstein, and he said at the moment the Germans are as closer to get the 5th spot, because that it goes on ranking and all that kind of stuff. So bad news for the guys with the likes of Manchester United, Aston Villa, Newcastle, maybe down there or up there. So same in Germany. So the 5th spot. That's why it was so disappointing, with Eintracht, because I thought they have a outside chance to get there. But 1-1 against Bochum, and it has to be said, there is a bit criticism in and around Dino Toppala. Don't get that, but still, that is all about expectations. But Markus, let's finish off with a player of the week, and I guess you can start this time.
Well, yes, I'll do player of the week, and he didn't play in the Bundesliga this weekend, but he is a Bundesliga player, and that is Sébastien Haller. Sébastien Haller is AFCON champion, along with Kosunu at Leverkusen. Against all odds, Ivory Coast, really. I mean, put into context, Sébastien Haller, on the July 30th, 2022, he was diagnosed, or it was reported by Dortmund that he had been diagnosed with testicular cancer. He was out for 6 months. Then in January 2022, 22nd, 2023, he was back in training. It was great news. Then 2 weeks later, on World Cancer Day, he comes back to Dortmund. He scores a goal. It's fantastic. I mean, there in of itself, it's a fantastic story. Then come last game of the season, Mainz at home. Dortmund, all they have to do is win the Bundesliga title. Now, a lot of variables that contributed to Dortmund drawing its Mainz, but Sébastien Haller missed a penalty, Dad. And he said after that really affected him, to the point in which it affected him more than his diagnosis, believe it or not. But unfortunately, carried into this season, a bit low on confidence. He had 0 goals in 11 league games. Dortmund bought Füllkrug. He lost his starting position. And that's kind of the Haller that went into AFCON with a bit of a niggle, bit of an injury. Ivory Coast play in Ivory Coast. They're hosting it. They go through the group stages as the best three. They lose 4-0. I think it was to Guinea, I believe, or what it was. They lost to Nigeria in the group stage, and then they go through all the way. Somehow they beat Senegal. They come to the semi-final. Haller makes his first start of the tournament. They play the Democratic Republic of Congo. Haller scores first goal of the tournament. Go through from the semi-final. Play against Nigeria in the final. Nigeria big favorites. Haller with his second start of the tournament, and he scores the winning goal. And from therein lies the beautiful story, from the very, very low to the very, very high. To see a player like that, and Dad, you're a fan, you followed him from Eintracht. We've followed him all the way through, and even through his time at West Ham that wasn't as successful, but then rejuvenate his career at Ajax, and now there as AFCON champion at home for his Ivory Coast is, for me, what football is about, and one of the more beautiful stories. So that's why he's my Bundesliga player of the week.
And the AFCON player of the week as well. I mean,
yes,
the story is unbelievable. As you were saying, Ivory Coast, favorite host nation, they fired their coach. The guy who won it now has been in charge for like is a couple of weeks. And you would say the best third. I think it was even the fourth best third. I think they were hopeless. Everybody thought they were out. So a big compliment to the Ivory Coast. It's a football nation. A lot of Ivory Coast players been in Norway. I remember I was the manager of Lillestrøm. We also had our Ivory Coast players there. So big compliment to them and Sébastien Haller. I mean, I saw it was 2-1 because I was busy. I couldn't see it. So, but I just hoped it was Sébastien Haller. And yes, it's a great story and good to have him back. Good for his confidence and good for everybody that dreams. That is what sport is all about. It's about dreaming. It is believing that thing can happen, and it's unbelievable. And I will say the same about my player of the week, Markus. I have to put my glasses on because he hasn't been around since 2021 when in May 2021 he got injured for Dortmund. I think they played Holstein Kiel in the semi-final, if I don't remember wrong. He's a Spaniard, 23-year-old Matei Morey, if I say that correct, because we haven't said his name for 3 years. He's been in rehab, Markus, for 3.5 years. He's always been around, and I've played with some of these players. I've been fortunate in my career to not have many injuries. I've had niggles, but I always played on, and when I was out for like a game, I was depressed. And this guy has been positive. Edin Terzic, after the game against Freiburg, because he got his minutes, he came on, got a fantastic welcome from Signal Iduna Park. He also scored a goal, and he almost scored a goal. He was that close. But wow, his contract is up in the summer. We'll see how this develop. A bit ambivalent because he played right back as Ryerson, now a Norwegian friend, is doing. But to get him back, it's just I can just feel it. 3.5 years in a rehab, and more or less careers like that, players just disappear. But Dortmund has been there, hoping for his chance. There was a chance now to get on, and Signal Iduna Park loved it. He loved it. He said this won't be one of the happiest day of my life. He will remember, of course, to be in his memory book for the rest of his life. So he is my player of the week, Markus. I love those stories as well. 2 players of the week who have a special story, which football is all about. It's all about emotions. It's all about passions, and it's all about coincidences as well. But as you know, Markus, when you were playing, all our talks that I will do with you since you were a kid, never think of the consequences, because just try to do the right thing. That was our Spaniard friend is doing. He's doing his rehab properly. Hope that his body finally will get together to play the Bundesliga again, and it did. So just a happy story, and may long it continue for him. And maybe Dortmund, if they have a great season, if he get enough games, they will not be generous, but they will think that maybe we'll get in another year to see how he improves when he can be there through our preseason.
Yeah, 2 fantastic stories, really. And I would recommend reading into it, because talk about being at the very lows of lows and now the highs of highs in many ways. That, just to conclude, we have obviously the Champions League games, and you did mention it, but Lazio hosts Bayern Munich on Wednesday, and then we got RB Leipzig playing Real Madrid on Tuesday. Those are the Bundesliga teams in Champions League action as well. Just as a reminder for the listener, Dad, any departing thoughts, or is this Auf Wiedersehen?
It's nearly Auf Wiedersehen. I just wanted to say 2 words about Madsen. Madsen, do I say it all right? The Chelsea player who is a Dortmund, and nobody in Dortmund understands why Chelsea let him go. He's been done an immediate impact, which is good to see. This transition or a transfer thing between Germany and England is quite interesting, because they take talents from there. Van den Beek is a different story. He was not even included in the Europa League squad for Eintracht Frankfurt. I saw Thomas Müller apologize for that, but then again, if you can't take the heat, get the hell out to the kitchen. I think that could be the last word. And Van Beek he's been struggling. It was okay at the beginning. They won the game. Didn't they win in Leipzig? Yeah, they won in Leipzig, and he was in the starting 11. But I hope that he will get back to his business, because he deserves it. He's a good lad, and hopefully will be coming back soon.
Yeah, it's interesting with the Madsen. Just concluded that the Madsen Tella, they were both at Burnley last season, the Championship. It's just funny how those things work, and it's just how a little bit dictated by circumstance and whatnot. But also, I guess for Premier League listeners as well, maybe explains a bit why Burnley are doing that poorly in the Premier League as well. But enough of that, Dad. As a pleasure as always. It was a lot to get through, obviously, but yeah, we might have a potential Bundesliga champion in our hand. Maybe not, because we also know Bayern, and we can never underestimate them, despite how poor they look at times. But for now, Dad, Auf Wiedersehen, and then we will catch up next week.
It's not over to the fat lady sings, and the stage hasn't even been built in Leverkusen, and she's still on her way, and she's not sure where she's going. She could be singing at the Mariaplatz in Munich anyway. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.